Alright guys, I'm going to be making an instructional video on how to install a Street Legal kit on the Sur-Ron Ultra Bee. Also, I did get some new t-shirts in, so if you guys like how they look, you can get some of those on my website under apparel and merch. But anyway, this is how I would recommend to do this install. Obviously, you can route the wires a little bit differently if you like, but this is what I'm going to suggest to do. So first things first, we're just going to start with getting the taillight mounted up. So I will show you that, and we'll go on from there. Alright, this is what the harness will look like. This is the default harness. You can get different options, so what you see here might not be exactly what you get. The taillight, I have already mounted it on the bike, but this is your front harness right here with the fork tube blinkers. You want to make sure that you turn these on before you actually mount them, because there's no way to tell which is left or right until you turn them on. So make sure you do that. This is the internal switch that you're going to be adding into the Sur-Ron Ultra Bee switch. I will show you how to do that shortly. This will plug into your 12 volt power at the phone charger, and it will also still leave you an extra 12 volt power to wire that back up. And then this is the little 5-pin extender wire that goes from the front of the bike to the tail light, and that's pretty much it. So we'll get started into this. Okay, first things first, to get off the seat, you're going to take your key and put it in right down there, twist up, and then you're going to kind of pull up and back at the same time. There we go. And that's going to give you access to where we need to hide the wiring. Alright, to take this fender off, you're going to need to take off these two Phillips head bolts here. There'll be two plastic clips here and here. And then there will be a Torx bit here and here. Let me see if I remember which size that is. It is a T30. So you'll have two T30s here and here. Once you take all those bolts out, then this whole fender can basically just lift up out of the way. And I have my holes drilled. So we have a 1/2 inch hole drilled here, two small 7/32 holes right here to just tidy up the wiring a little bit. Okay, this is going to be how to mount the taillight onto the Ultra Bee. And as you can tell, all I'm doing basically is something similar to that. And this is actually the same size as this light is also. So you're just going to kind of lay this in here and try to center it up as good as you can, and make sure that you're not going to be too far back, because you obviously don't want this to make it so that your taillight is on top of these plastic ridges here. And so I'm just going to get this as centered as I possibly can and try to make it nice and straight. And then you're just going to drill the holes, and you want to make sure that you are lined up with where you need to be. You can tape this on if that will help you, but it should be pretty straightforward. You're going to use a 7/32 drill bit, I believe, from when I've done this before, and just chuck that up into your drill. Make sure that it's also nice and straight. And then we will move on to bolting this fender back on, as I've already shown you how to take it off. Let me get this readjusted here. So I'm just going to put this right on the dot on that template. Okay, and then you got that first hole drilled, and I like to just double check because I can make some small adjustments if I need to. but I'm just gonna poke this back through, and it will be a tight fit because obviously you don't want it to be all loose and ready to fall out on you. I just kind of test fit that, and that's looking pretty darn good. So I'm going to go ahead and put that template back on and drill the other 2 holes. Also, if you have one of these little deburr tools that can help get the plastic little chips, basically. So now I'm just going to start with the bolt in the center, and then I will work my way out from there. This can be kind of tricky to do, but what I like to do is just kind of get this most of the way threaded through, and then kind of look underneath and get it roughly lined up, and then you should feel it kind of drop into that threaded insert on the taillight, and then I just tighten it up until it's almost snug up against the bottom of the fender, but I don't fully tighten it yet because I still have 2 other holes that I have to line up. And so this is going to be a little bit easier to do than the first one because all you're going to do is kind of get it close lined up, and you should be able to see that through the hole that you've made. So it's a little bit easier to see what you're doing. There we go. Got that one in. And the last one can be a little bit tricky. Sometimes you need to elongate that hole just a tiny bit, but typically you can get it to go right in without giving you too much trouble. So just is going to depend on how good you are at drilling a hole, I guess, but shouldn't be too difficult. And then I'm going to go ahead and fully tighten these down. You don't want to over tighten them because those brass inserts can spin, but just tight enough, nothing too crazy, and your tail light will be mounted on there nice and tight. There we go. And as you can tell, this thing is sturdy, not coming off with those 3 bolts. I actually looped my bike with this taillight in the sand. Not the same one, but you know, the same design. I'll post a picture of it on my Instagram, but it survived. After you get the taillight hole drilled and the taillight mounted, like I showed you before, you're going to feed that 5-pin female from the taillight up through that hole and kind of direct it right here. And then we will connect the 5-pin male extender right onto this, and we're going to run that up to the front of the bike. When you run this wire along these plastics here, you're welcome to zip tie it or tape it down, Velcro it somehow, however you like. But now we're just going to get the rest of this ran up through here near the battery. So in order to get this little cover up, you just flip these down, and you can kind of push down at the same time, and then you should be able to lift this right up, and that's right where the battery is. And this is also how we're going to get access to this 12-volt phone charger port. So there's these 2 bolts on this side, and then there's a little clip for this little strut that you have to take off. But anyway, so just run this 5-pin wire right along through here, And then after we remove the phone charger, we'll actually push this down through this cavity right here. And then we will push it out near the horn in the front, and I will show you that. But let's get off this strut and then pull off these bolts here. And then there's one up above for the phone charger, so I'm going to do that. Okay, to get that little clip off, I'm just going to use some little needle nose pliers, and you can just kind of work it out like that. It does have kind of like a weird little hook on it, but it does come right off. So I've got that off. Keep that somewhere where you're not going to lose it. And then in order to get this little pin out, you might need to lift up on the strut a little bit, and then you should be able to pull it right out. And then you can move this up and out of your way to get to that bolt and that bolt for the phone charger. Okay, I have all of those bolts removed for the phone charger, so you're going to basically lift this up and pull back while this is also lifted up. That'll be kind of hard for me to show you one-handed, but there you go, just like that. And then there'll be two connectors on the back of this, and you'll just remove these. And make sure that anytime you're pulling on these connectors, you pull on the connector, not the wire, because you could rip out that wire. So make sure that you're only pulling on the connector. If you need some needle nose pliers or something like that, go ahead and do that. And then we're going to end up routing our wiring back in that little cavity there, just to keep everything tidy. As you can tell on the back of this, there is a negative on the plastic kind of embossed right here, and a positive embossed right there. So the gold one will be negative, the silver will be your positive. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hook up these two wires here. We'll do the red to the positive, and the color of this other wire might change, but positive will always be red. So just for future reference, this will probably be black eventually. But anyway, so I've got that plugged in here, and then these two connectors are going to plug into the bike power supply, basically, that we just removed from the back of this. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I will show you how to tidy up these wires. Okay, this might start to get a little bit confusing, but on the Sur-Ron end, green is ground and black is actually positive. So once you get that hooked up, I'm going to start to run my wiring down inside this cavity, and it will end up going right here where the horn is. There's a little cavity right there that we can slide some of the wiring through, and then slide it up and hook it into this little fork stop. Basically, there's a little loop on the bottom that you can run the wires through to get it up to the front. Okay, you can now put that phone charger back on after you get that power wiring fed through, and that 5-pin extender is ran right there through up and then through this tiny window. If you try and run it up and over, it probably won't reach, so make sure you run it through that small window. And then just put this back on, and then I ran these two wires through this little rubber grommet here and out of that little hole by the horn. And then next we're going to take off the headlight cover just so that we have a little bit easier access to tidy the wires. I have the phone charger all hooked back up and my wires ran. So to get this front headlight cover off, you're going to remove this bolt here and this bolt up there. And then there's also going to be one on either side right here, and then the same thing on the other side. This bolt right here, down this smaller one without the washer, is for bolting the headlight. You don't need to remove that. Just take this off, same thing on the other side, and then we're going to kind of lift this and just twist it out of the way for now, and we'll continue. Now that I have the headlight off, this is going to be where we're going to cable manage and just hide our wires a little bit right in this area here. If you would like, you can kind of tidy these up a little bit more if you wanted. But anyway, so just get that twisted up out of your way. And then next we're going to install the front harness, which should be pretty easy. And the first thing we're going to start doing with the front harness is we're going to take this bar switch off and then split it apart. And I will show you how to install that little 3-position switch that is going to allow this to have turn signals. So first you're going to need to take off this little plate, and you can do that from the inside easier actually. So let's just go ahead and get this set screw off and the Phillips heads off the back and get this bar switch pulled apart. Alright, I have this bar switch pulled apart. So basically all you're going to do is gently pull this apart and open it up, and you will see this little white basically block. And this is meant for the actual turn signal switch. As you can see, I have the same thing here. You may need to trim the one I send you just a little bit on the corners to get it to fit, or you can pull off the stock one and swap it onto here. Either way, it's up to you. It's probably easier to just trim it a little bit. But anyway, on the inside of here, I will show you quickly. There is these 2 little gold Phillips heads. You're going to remove those, and that will allow you to pull all this off. And you'll also take that little back plate off. After that, you might just need to get a little flathead under this or a razor blade. It pops off pretty easily, but I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I will show you how to bolt on the new one. As you can see, these are basically identical. So to mount this up, you're going to pull out the Phillips head underneath this little switch, basically, the little plastic cover. And I popped out the little back plate for this. So now you can see there is a slot. Pretty straightforward, nothing too crazy. And we're going to drop that new switch in here, screw it in, and you're going to run the wires right next to the stock ones. So I'll go to that point. I have the little switch mounted. Make sure that you don't pinch this white or blue wire when you do this. So tighten that up, run the 3 little wires through that channel, and then just go ahead and put the switch back together, and then we will mount up our little plastic button. After you get your switch all finished up, you're going to route this wire through right next to the other wires, and then you're going to basically turn this sideways and tuck it up inside of here, and make sure that you plug in everything. So you're going to plug in that 5-pin connector, you're going to plug in the 2-pin connector for the power, and make sure that everything is working as it should. And then also you're going to turn the key on and actuate the blinkers to make sure that you have these mounted on the correct side. So just turn the key and then right blinker, and so this one is the right blinker, so I'm going to just set it off to that side, and the left blinker is this one. So that way you don't mess anything up. And also take note of which direction this is flowing. So you want the zip tie on this one to be on the inside, right? And you're going to peel this backing. And then on this other side, it's the same thing. Zip tie needs to be on that side. So pretty straightforward, but just want to make sure that you guys are doing this and it's as easy as possible for you. So I'm going to turn that off, and then I'm going to zip tie all of this stuff up and make it nice and neat, and we will put these on as well. I actually found it easier to route those wires behind the headlight right here by the steering stem, and these 2 wires right here are for your brake micro switch. And so basically you're going to pull out the green and like lime colored one, and then you're going to plug in my harnesses, and then you're going to plug this free one into the stock one, and that's just basically going to tee it all together, and that's what will run the brake light. But it's pretty much done. All I'm going to do now is put back on the front number plate, and the installation is finished. This customer, I left him an extra power connector because he's going to probably install my lights later as auxiliary lights, so I'm going to leave that right there. But other than that, everything is good to go, and I will show you the finished product. Alright, I got this thing all finished up, and it's super clean. The only thing you can really see is these little turn signals right here and right there. And then I have my tail light mounted up, and this guy wanted the all of the stuff to make it street legal. So license plate mount, the white license plate light, and that's the tail light. And then I will turn on the blinkers and show you how the blinkers work. So they're little sequential blinkers just like that. They might look like they're flickering a little bit, but that's just the camera. They are just normal blinkers in real life. And then the tail light also has sequential turn signals on it. And the brake light works as well, but I think it came out pretty dang clean. It just wires right into the 12 volt on the phone charger. And I was able to do my own idea with this switch. This is not the European switch. I was able to make this on my own and incorporate this into the stock switch that normally has this blocked off. So all you'll have to do is pull this apart and put it back together with my parts. It's not that hard. It maybe take you 5 minutes, but anyway, that is the entire setup. Obviously, depending on your state, you might need a different style of blinkers. I offer those on the website, and depending on the state, you might need some longer blinkers that come out here, which I also offer on the website. So just look for those options and just make sure that you get everything that you need. But it came out pretty sweet.